Welcome, everyone. This is the 10th meetup. That's super exciting how time flies. So, tonight we're going to have two speakers. Let me quickly get through the classic introduction. This is the format for tonight. We're going to have two speakers. As usual, we try to get to maximum 20 minutes per presentation. Let's see about that. We're going to have a little Q&A after each of the talks. It's all going to be recorded and live streamed, as you hopefully see now. And I'm going to do my best to get it up on YouTube, the recordings later on in time. And typical code of conduct. Please be kind, be respectful, be curious. Please engage with us in the Q&A section. There's a QR code down there that you can scan anytime if you've any question, or if you want to participate in voting questions up or down that matter to you. So please engage with us. This makes this meetup so interesting, and reach out to me if you have any concerns. I'm here if you think there's anything breaching this code of conduct. And who am I? I'm Stefan. I'm doing Rust since 2017, 18 years in game development. You might know my open source projects, GitUI and LifeAsk. LifeAsk is actually this Q&A platform that we are using here. And I founded Rust Unit, a Rust consultancy. And if you want to have any more information, just check us out on rustunit.com. And here's the Q&A QR code. But like I said, this one down there is the same one. So feel free to scan that. And without further ado, I would put our first speaker of tonight up on stage. Give a warm welcome to Tristan. And
thank you, Stefan. Hi, everyone.
Coming up now. The stage is yours. Thank you so much, Tristan.
Thank you. Hi everyone. Thank you for having me. Tonight I will present to you from zero to demo a developer's experience with learning Bevy. It's about how I picked up Bevy, how I discovered it, and how it went from knowing nothing, not even Rust, to delivering a demo about a month ago. So a little about me. I'm Tristan, a French solo game dev. I'm a self-taught programmer. I started as a teenager. I used to be a software engineer outside of the video game industry for 15 years. I did a lot of things, mostly PHP, JavaScript, a tiny bit of other stuff. But I never touched Rust. I've always been into game dev as side projects. Did a lot of jams, mostly Ludum Dare. First on Unity and then Godot. And now I'm working full time on Green Fit Heaven, which is a commercial game that I will sell on Steam with the best game engine ever made, Bevy. So here is a little video about the game. So it's like RimWorld. It plays like RimWorld, but it looks like Stardew Valley and has overall a brighter tone. And the weather system, day-night cycle, and all of that stuff. So it's a fantasy colony theme where you manage a settlement of halflings. I started this project as an experiment with Bevy 0.9 in December 22, so that's quite a few years ago now. And I went full time with it January 24, so it's about more than a year ago. And the demo released on Steam on March 25, at the end of March 25, because there was a Steam festival about city building and colony themes. So it was perfect timing for that. And I'm aiming end of 25 for an early access version, and it now a must have because there is GTA 6 next year, so better avoid that. What made Bevy appealing? How I went into Bevy? I was at work and I frequently check hot and trending on GitHub. And one day I saw Bevy on it, and I checked and I saw data-driven game engine, and that kind of interested me. I didn't knew about ECS or that kind of stuff. But when I read about the website, I saw that it's about splitting stuff into system and components and a way to split code and organize. And I was attracted to it almost immediately, because at the time I was working making a GraphQL API, and I loved the approach of splitting the code into resolvers. GraphQL API is mostly that. It's splitting your problem into tiny problems that you put in resolvers, and you batch them, and it makes an API. And I kind of love that approach. And this is the first thing I saw in Bevy. It's okay, I can split my big problem into small problems, put them into systems, and it's very close to the way I mentally solve problems. I also knew by reputation that Rust is a performant language. You got C-level performance. And Bevy offered a complete suite. Like you have everything you need: renderer, inputs, audio. You have all of it. So you don't have to worry about what am I gonna put with it. You have all of it. And it was open source, and for me it's very very important because I didn't want to risk some license problems like we saw with Unity. And I'm gonna speed up a bit because it's 4 minutes already. So the mostly how this presentation is has been designed is I will present obstacles and solution I found to them. It's ordered in it's following the timeline I had with the project. So when I start Greenfield Haven, also a little disclaimer before that, I'm a beginner and still learning. I've been doing Rust and Bevy for 2 years, so it makes me still a junior in that with that technology. It's not about state-of-the-art ECS or clean code. It's not my goal, because my goal is delivering a game for a one-person studio. I'm doing everything alone. And it has to be maintainable. So I'm not here for the research purpose of progressing the cause of ECS game engine. So my first problem was, okay, I discovered this cool engine. How am I gonna organize my code? I need to split and isolate problems. Like I don't care about UI when I'm working on pathfinding. It shouldn't be even in my head. It seems obvious, but I'm stating it here. I don't want a 5,000 lines system for AI or anything. I want to have small functions. I want to avoid code duplication, obviously. For example, in my game, updating the terrain is a complex task because it changes the tile that is rendered. It changes the pathfinding and the terrain properties. So there is a lot of code to execute to change a tile, but it can happen from many sources, like a green fit. So a villager build something, or a wall was destroyed, or something other happened. So my solution was events everywhere, but I'm pretty happy about it. So here is my, for instance, an event hierarchy for when a structure is built. So when a villager finishes working, it triggers an event called build structure, and this event will call more events, like grant XP to give the builder some XP in building, spatial sound to trigger some audio, a job complete that will in its turn triggers more events. It's like if the build job was the dependency of another job, so I want to execute some logic. So you get the picture. It's a hierarchy of events, and most of the games, the game system works like this. Like there is no no mute access in systems. Most of the changes in the state of the game will come from events. It has some pros. and I realized most of the consequences of this choice later when the project became bigger. It's solving a problem inside the box, and I like it. It's like this event is granting XP. The only problem I have in my system, my system reading the events, is I grant XP to a villager, and nothing else. The rest of the universe doesn't exist. Event hierarchy is an easy mental model, at least for me when I am designing. Having those hierarchy is really easy to navigate, and it's fast to reuse because if you have a small specialized events, it's really easier to add them to your tool belt, and you can pull them out when you need them. Like playing a sound is a really nice event to have because you will be playing sound everywhere in the game. But it also has some cons, like it's not transactional. It breaks atomicity. For instance, the hierarchy I showed before. If something fails, like granting XP fails or playing a sound fails, you can't roll back. You can't roll back the previous event, the first event that triggered the cascade. It can be easily rolled back. So you have to make each system very defensive. Like if something goes wrong, I have to handle that. At my level, stop the propagation, and the game has to stay in a stable state. And it's not easy when you are designing and splitting responsibilities between events. It can trigger some complex reflection. Ordering can be tricky, and it's a minor spoiler of another problem ahead, which is called one frame delay. And there is some boilerplate code because you have to declare all your events. Here is an example of one of my plugins, and it seems a small boilerplate code, but I often ended up forgetting to declare an event and compiling, launching the game, and it crashed instantly. So it was a really minor annoyance, but nonetheless. The second problem I ran into was compilation time, and it's a few months after designing. Okay, nice. I have all those events, those systems. It's working quite nice. But my problem is I'm nearing at this time 30,000 line of code. My median compilation time is 3 minutes, and I read that for most Rustaceans, it's not a problem, but for me it was. I'm coming from the PHP world, the web developer, the world of the web development, and we are used to fast iteration, live reloads. You touch a line, you refresh, and check often. And I had a very hard time getting into that mentality of Rust is strong enough to allow me to not compile often, because Clippy is a real helper. So those 3 minutes break, it really breaks the flow for me. It's in 3 minutes is the time needed for me to escape to Twitter or Blue Sky and thinking about something else and not being in the mood for dev anymore. So it was a problem, and the obvious solution was to split into crates, which I did. Or here is a small subset. I'm gonna go quick there because I think it's beginner level. The hierarchy in the game is I have at the bottom, at the top on the picture, I have a model crate. In the model, there is what is needed by everything in the game. Every crate requires model because it's the basic stuff. It's like the villagers, tile data, all those structs that are used anywhere. And at the higher level, I have the request crates. I call them that way. It's specialized collection of events related to one topic. For instance, in item requests, you will find an event that is fired when an item is picked up, or is dropped on the floor, or is put into storage. It allows my higher level crates with the system to be dependent only on the requests they need. So when I modify item requests, I only recompile what really depends on that. And model is like the worst case scenario in compilation time. If you touch model, you recompile the whole project. But even with thanks to incremental builds, it's around 15 seconds now, and it's much better. It's median. It can be 1 minute in some case, but it also can be 2 seconds if I am working at in a high level crate. So kind of a nice approach, balanced approach. A problem I had next is that okay, I have an event first approach with many crates, so many plugins, declaring a lot of system, and all of those systems at the time run in updates with no explicit ordering, no system set whatsoever. It's all, I just put them here and it worked really nice back then. But I started as I was nearing publishing a first alpha of the game. I started to notice all those little problems with the animation is off by 1 frame. There is some flickering when an item spawn. It goes in the middle of the world and then it goes in the right place because I had all those events unordered. So like I say, there are hundreds of systems in 20 crates. Some events call themselves back. Some events are emitted after the system that reads them is run. And you can do an after on a system that is not in the same crates. Like I have 2 crates, item and villager. I can't say, hey, this system in item it must run after the system in this villager crate. Not possible. So the solution was to use a system set. I have a fixed schedule of systems that is ordered using a chain. Mostly it's like collecting the input, the main game loop, UI, running late events. It's event that must happen at the very last to collect all the changes that happen during the game loop. And there is a despawn indexation, so it's more like it's more about building. I have an index for spatial lookup, pathfinding. It's there that I collect every changes last based on what happened in the event and the main loop. So it was the first step, but doesn't solve all because it doesn't solve cyclic event dependencies. What if I have an event that triggers the same event? Like a roof collapses, it has to check the other roofs and propagate the collapsing if there is no wall attached. And the miracle happened because it was the perfect the exact time Bevy released with a new feature, and my best, the feature I like the most, observers. So my new mental model for this, for system events and triggers observers is this. Do I need to do things every frame? Yes. So it's a system. No. Is it batched? Do I need to collect some events, accumulate them, and perform something batched? Or do I require a specific timing within the frame? If yes, it's an event, and no, it's a trigger. I moved. Like 80% of the event I had moved to triggers. I use them so much that I opened a few weeks ago a PR to fix last trigger ID, which was overflowing in the dev environment. So my game, after 15 minutes, my game crashed because of that in development mode. Next problem I encountered was UI. So the game was taking shape, and I required better to make a complex UI because it's a management game. So I must have some complex UI. At the time I first thought about it, it was Bevy O10, and it felt like the UI was not good. Not it was not good enough, but not enough for what I needed. I required a window system, a window inside the game, to handle content overflow like scrolling, drag and drop. And to me, coding systems is easier than maintaining a hierarchy of entities. Like if my UI is one system, it's really easier to me mentally. So here is a screenshot of what UI can be. You see a window, some custom widgets, list, selection, that kind of stuff. The solution to me was like most at the time EGUI, because immediate mode is just about writing a system. And for long computation, you can still use a cache component or resource. And for that, read-only components with the last release will help me a lot, because all my cache will move to read-only component. So if something changes, it triggers, it's caught by a system, would generate the component, put it on an entity, and my UI can read it. So with this solution, it was good for a while, but my UI grew out of control because it's complex UI. So I had systems with dozens of queries. I was fighting the borrow checker for mutable access all the time. Here is an example of a big system. It's not the biggest, but it's big for itself. My solution for the borrow checker was to say, okay, UI systems are mostly read-only. I'm going to do the same as my game. It's need to update something. It's a trigger. It's my trademark. It's a trigger or an event. But you get the idea. And for big systems, I have no solutions. That's why I'm asking the question. Because if I do big systems, I end up with the system params that containing the whole universe, and the conflicting queries will become a nightmare to manage. And I have a small screenshot after I will show you. So I stumbled upon a GitHub discussion where a user named Heavyrees proposed a widget system, like a way to have you have a system with mutable world access, and you can create a hierarchy of widgets. And it works kind of well to isolate and reduce the number of systems you depend on. But I'm ending fighting the borrow checker a lot, and it's an ongoing problem for me. It's not a deadly problem, but it's an ongoing problem. So you see on the left, it's a big system param. It's my biggest, and I can't fit in the screenshot, so it's all I depend on. And on the right, there is the widget approach, with it much more elegant. But if you'll notice, I have multiple calls to get mute here, state get mute world. It's because if I remove them, I end up in a borrow checker error. I'm above time, so I'm going to speed up a bit. So if you ask me what I want for Christmas, I want a non-intrusive way to split my UI systems. It will be the cherry on the cake. I'm pretty happy about the engine for now, but it will be the top of it. It will be Bevy enters the legend for me. And the last problem I'm going to really speed up is the lack of an editor. First, for better debugging, like I want to show hidden data that I won't put in the game. I want to execute cheat codes, inspect my component states, more logging capabilities. But also for making the game, like most of the stuff I thought was, it would be nice if, like Godot, I could create some prefabs, like this particle system or this villager animation. I want to make it in a UI and then use it in the game. So my solution was to for a part of the problem, like the debugging aspect, the inspection part of the problem, I made my own editor. So it has filterable logs by entity. You can click like here, if you click on the number, it will move the camera to the position where the log was emitted. You can click to the entity to select it. There is some kind of filter, full text search. You can show technical information like pathfinding, region, because it's a hierarchical pathfinding. There are some cheats available, cheat codes, performance monitoring, and a component inspector. And it's working quite well. I'm just missing the capability to edit prefabs and live view. Have a live view of when I'm creating a prefab and then be able to use it in the game. But I have read the update and it seems to go to be going the right way. Each Bevy update is like Christmas for me. I'm really enjoying so far. So that's it. Thank you for listening to to it, and a lot we didn't talk about in the slide to stay in the reasonable amount of time. Thank you.
Wow, Tristan, thank you so much. That was really like a speeding up in the end.
Oh yeah, sorry.
No worries. Yeah, cool. So we have some questions here. Let me go through them.
Yes.
And everyone in the stream, please feel free to vote on them so that I get through them in order of relevance. So the first one is love the pragmatic approach. Was there anything you would still do differently, knowing what you know now? I think that's goes back to the beginning when you said like, "Hey, fuck it, I just want to get shit done."
It's still my approach today. Like my usual workflow is when I'm adding something new to the game, I'm making a big component, a big struct, and a big system with all in it, and it's iteratively I split it into smaller systems. But if the thing I would have done differently, I think, is choosing my UI library. I think if I have knew back then how fast Bevy could deliver new features, I would have stick with Bevy UI and try to, okay, it's not perfect for what I need, but I know like in 1 or 2 updates it will be miles away from where it is now.
Yeah, definitely moved a lot. I mean, you also are with Bevy already for a long time. Did I see that correctly? 0.10 was the first version, right?
Yes, I was on 0.9 when I learned, but the project started on 0.10.
Yeah. That's there. Lots has changed in that time. Okay, so the next one I think you answered already. Like talking about these amount of events. Are we talking about event reader writer or observer triggers? I guess you pointed out your like history of migrating eventually, right?
Everything was event in the beginning, and then moved mostly to triggers.
Yeah, the next one is still in that vein. So how did you keep, like you mentioned, you had like a very good mental model of these event hierarchies. How did you make sure of that? Like I've seen back in the days, there was, I think it was even Thierry who built like this whole event reader writer dependency visualization graph plugin at one point, because it can really go out of hand, right? Like how did you keep all of that in your head? What event triggers what?
Yeah, I've no tool to visualize, but I'm using Notion to keep tracks. Notion to keep tracks of everything.
Your own little scheme.
Yeah, and it's mostly I use comments a lot in my code, and also it's tiny systems, so it's easy to at a glance to see what's happening down there. Like you see all the command.trigger. Trigger targets and all that stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it got better when you switched to observers in terms of being able to reason what happens in what order, and also being sure that stuff actually happens in the right frame, right?
Yes, the main advantage of triggers is that it's almost immediate. It's guaranteed to run within the frame. So unless something absolutely goes wrong, like infinite loop, there is almost no risk.
Yeah, well, we'll notice when that happens.
Yes.
Okay. Did you ever consider a domain-driven crate separation model instead of this everything depends on model, I guess?
I could have gone that road, but when the split occurred, it was already too late. The game had been a single crate for too long, and I couldn't find the time and the energy to split, to finish the split. Like like model ended up to be like okay, it's the legacy. Like everything I can split, I put it there, and the idea is to touch this the less often possible. So it stays out of my way in terms of compile time.
So it's not like this, every component ends up in this model crate kind of thing, so that you almost always have to recompile it. If you add
no, because because if a component is private in the sense of it doesn't need to be known outside of for say items, it stays in the higher level possible crates.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay, so it's really just the stuff that really has to be shared between multiple crates.
Yeah. It's not perfect, but it's good enough, and it solved my problem, so I didn't push it further.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay. Speaking of compile times, did you consider more asset-driven development with hot reloading?
I read about it, but it felt a bit overwhelming to me. Like I had to do a lot of instrumentation. It felt a bit intrusive, and I'm very afraid of intrusive solution. Like you have to alter the whole project to get a feature, and it can lead to consequences almost everywhere. So I want to try it, but I didn't take time yet.
Okay, makes sense. So you have no like custom formatted asset files that you load. It's all hard coded essentially.
It's all hard coded, yes.
And stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, images and system. Images and systems would be a good name.
Yeah, it's going to be great on Steam. Okay, moving on. You mentioned read-only components. Can you elaborate?
Yeah, it's. I saw that in the latest release of Bevy. There are no read-only components. They use them, as I saw, for relation stuff, and I want to use them for caching. Like I'm using GUI, so it's immediate mode. But stuff like in management game, like computing the inventory of the village, where you have to explore all the items and do nice stats, it doesn't play well with immediate mode, because I don't want to count the items each frame. So I have a system of caching, if a new item spawns or is moved, it updates a component that is used by GUI, so I can display the inventory. And I think I'll move that to read-only component. So I'm sure no one interferes with this component.
Yeah. I think they call it immutable components, right? I guess that's.
Oh yes, sorry, it's immutable.
Yeah. Makes sense. Okay, that's an interesting approach. I mean, it's definitely a huge project being built on top of eGUI. That's very exciting. Especially like seeing what you shared in terms of visuals. Like it's almost like if you wouldn't tell anyone, it's almost hard to realize that this is actually eGUI under the hood, right? That's pretty impressive. Cool, Tristan. I would like you to stick around for our panel conversation at the end. Really great presentation. Thank you so much, and hope chat gives you a big hand. And thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you for listening.
Awesome. Okay, let's get ready for our second speaker tonight. Let me put up JP on stage. Welcome from Canada. Really appreciate to have you tonight.
Hey,
let me put up my slides, and then the stage is yours.
Awesome. Hey, everyone. Thanks, everyone, for being here tonight. Thank you, Stefan, for the opportunity to talk. Long time lurker for Bevy Meetups, first time talker. So this is cool. A lot of fun. Thanks, Tristan. Also, that talk was really awesome. I saw a lot of parallels actually in our experiences. So give me some reassurance that we're going down the right track here. Okay, let's go. In keeping with the theme tonight, I think I might be pressed for time, so we'll try and make it a little quick. This talk is basically about another viewpoint sort of based talk, a experiential talk, us coming to the Bevy ecosystem, pushing our commercial product through in a very short time span. So I hope that maybe this talk is useful to those who are considering Bevy, those who might spin up a new team or who might transition from an existing game dev team over to Bevy. To give you a sense, quick introduction for Bloom and myself. My name is JP. Obviously, I'm the tech director at Bloom. Digital. We're a small Canadian game studio founded by Miriam Verberg over a decade ago, I want to say. We tend to make small visual novels, and they are usually targeted at sort of underserved markets. So the titles that we have launched are Long Story, which is sort of like a middle school coming of age kind of dating lifestyle sim. Later Daters, which is for retirement community living, so kind of opposite ends of the demographic spectrum there. And then we just dropped a slightly bigger game with Disney called Curse Cafe, which I'll get more to in a second. As for myself, what's like more relevant to this talk and my programming experience, I started learning C++ in high school. I was actually living in the States at the time and did computer science back when they taught C++ in high school. And so I started there. And then when I went to actually go work in software, I started with ActionScript and Flash and HTML and CSS, because that's where I got hired. So I learned to make games in Flex Builder with ActionScript, and kind of got hired from there at what was then called Synchro, is now called Sega Mini. Did a bunch of work there. That studio transitioned over into Unity and C#, so I went with it, learned C#, and then stuck with that for, until now, pretty much. So yeah, I've done some other stuff, released a bunch of tiny games. You might have heard of me over the years, or maybe not. I don't know. I'm not super loud about what I do. But tried a little bit of stuff in Rust a few years back, and went, oh, this is kind of good, and it was like, wouldn't it be cool if my job could be Rust? And so this is sort of, in a way, a bit of a story of like that kind of coming to pass. I wanted to quickly, I called this slide Banana for Scale, because I want to quickly give a sense of sort of the upper bound of what Bloom does in sort of the complexity of our games, to give you a sense of the depth and the breadth of the games we make. I know people are thinking, oh, you guys make visual novels, like you don't need a programmer for that. Some people think that, right? Some people feel that way. I mean, sure, for certain types of visual novel experience, if you want to make something in Twine or whatever, absolutely go for it. But this was a huge undertaking, this game. And the final product was about close to 40,000 lines of C# and Unity. It's not just a visual novel. There's a little bit of potion mixing mechanics and clue discovery and things like that. So there's a lot of like database juggling and so we had to make like tools like unit tests and all that stuff. And then layered on top of that is this 100,000 lines or more, I think, of ink. And so ink, if you're not familiar, for those who don't know about ink, or if you've heard of Yarn, it's like Yarn. If you don't know about Yarn, then these are a scripting language. It's a scripting language that is basically meant to tokenize things, tokenize like a movie script almost, and just send it to you line by line. But it does have built-in capability of branching choices, of math, Boolean logic, all that stuff. It's a very capable scripting language in its own sense. Most people use it as a conversation driver in a game or something like that, and that is what it excels at. So 100,000 lines of ink is not obviously 100,000 lines of code, of programming code, but if you imagine the amount of branching and the amount of permutations and combinations of possibilities, you start to see, oh my gosh, the problem space in terms of like QA and making sure that things don't break, and that gets huge, right? So I want to make sure that that's understood, that VNs, they require quite a lot, and obviously I think a lot of people come to Bevy for performance, so they come to it for parallelism and things like that, and not necessarily the strengths that we were looking for in Bevy or needed from Bevy. Then layered on top of ink are what we call Blinky. That's why I named this talk Blinky, and you might miss it. It's a dumb name. Sorry about that. Really stupid joke, but there you go. Not the last one I'll make in this presentation, but Blinky is like our superset language of ink. So what I mean by that is, like, Inkle, the company that makes ink, has a recommendation for certain ways to format your ink and certain ways that you might, standardize. We codify that in-house, and we say, okay, the writers are going to definitely do, if they're going to call it a speaker, it's going to be in caps like this. And if there's going to be a pose associated with it, it's going to be in parentheses before a colon. And then there's like action lines, which like a disembodied narrator says, and things like that. Those are written out just as plain text. And then sort of pasted on top of that are these hashtag commands, which get tokenized and actually interpreted and parsed as its own mini scripting language. Obviously, it's a very imperative and sequential programming language in the sense that like you can only tell the engine to do stuff. You don't get returns. You can't do like recursive functions or things like that, except insofar as like these affect the global game state of the engine. So you could do some tricky stuff, and we do some tricky stuff. We do a lot of tricky stuff with this, but the writing teams that we've had, and especially Heather Jackson, who's our narrative director, who's a brilliant writer and has become a pretty good programmer in her own right, have learned to use the system, and it sort of vibes with them, and so they get into it. I'm not going to get too much more into this. We did a DevCon talk on it a few years back. You can check that out, or of course, I'm happy to chat more with people about it afterwards. But we want to talk about Bevy, and so it's been I'm 5 minutes into this presentation. I haven't said much about Bevy yet, so let's talk about Bevy. So this is our soft launch of Long Story 2. You all heard it here first. Long Story 2 is going to be in Bevy, or it's going to be a Bevy engine. We actually already have a live internal beta on Steam, which is the Bevy version of Long Story 2. And for those Bevy vets who are interested in getting a key, I think we have a few of those to give out. We would love to have people's thoughts and advice. I'm fairly new to Bevy. I've been making games for a long time, but yeah, we absolutely would love community support. and yeah, so I called this a rapid team transition in the title of the talk, and just to give you a sense of how condensed this is, it's been like 3 months, if we're being generous, of like real actual development work on this port. Yeah, in like 2022 or to 2024, we were working on Curse Cafe. So obviously, like the bulk of our team, which is a small team, by the way, I think we have like 7 to 10 core staff at the most. And then, when we had the big Disney bucks, it was like maybe 20 with contractors if you really wanted to like sprawl out. But for the most part, I think, the core team is very tight, especially developers. We only had at most two developers at once. So for the most part, we were pretty busy, but we did manage to put out a Unity version of Long Story 2 as a demo in 2024 for Steam Next Fest. And then just over the December winter holiday of 2024, I had really healthy boundaries between work and vacation. And I decided, what if I just worked on a thing that was like for, making a port of our game into Bevy. And yeah, poked at it in December and ended up with something that kind of worked. Showed it to Miriam, the big boss of Bloom, in early January. And of course, over the years, a couple other things have happened and sort of to like make us less certain about our choice to stay with Unity, like things like the runtime fee and the elimination of the plus fee and all that stuff. So it kind of just worked out that the timing was great. And in the future, so we're going to release hopefully sometime in June, early June is the planned initial public release on Steam of Long Story 2. That's the Bevy version of it. And beyond that, we'd like to drop an iOS version. And we would like to open source Blinky to some extent, maybe offer like a commercial support thing or something. We have to commercialize. It is the necessary evil for us to exist. So probably, those who are grizzled game dev vets in the audience are probably going, what on earth were you doing? Why did you rewrite your game in Bevy? And we have a number of reasons, and I'm going to run out of time if I go too much into depth here, but uncertainty around, how is Unity going to make money in the future? They already tried to pull that like retroactive runtime fee. I know they've walked it back and blah, 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 but we don't trust them. We don't want like a lot of our stuff, we don't want to rely on US software if we can't, especially as a Canadian studio. I think we are a little bit like, let's bring stuff home if we can. Let's get it out of the US at the very least. And we definitely wanted to have more sitting team members access to the engine. So of course, if you're using Unity properly and you have a pro license, you need to have a pro license for every sitting member. And for a tiny team that doesn't, we don't rake in the big bucks. That $2,000-$3,000 US per year, it really starts to add up per team member that wants to sit in the pipeline. And then ultimately, I mean, Bloom as a company, like, you know, we are a very progressive company. I think we hope to be, and we have sort of progressive ideals and values, and we want to contribute as well back to free and open source software projects like Bevy. And so speaking of, we did the thing. I have committed all of one PR to Bevy, so yay. And that was this file watcher thing. Actually, Tristan mentioned at the end of that talk, the question and answer, you know, there was a question of a more asset focused pipeline, and that's what we did. We actually have a very asset focused pipeline. That's because we have a team that's trying to build in this one. So we needed this fix because we have multiple crates. Blinky's its own crate, and then the game is a crate, and then there's sort of the main virtual workspace that contains everything. So one of the first things I noticed as I was building this Bevy prototype was that, oh, hey, I can't seem to get File Watcher working in certain virtual workspace scenarios. So that worked. And thank you to those who helped me out with this PR. It was my first PR that I ever pushed to Bevy. So awesome community. Really love everyone that I was interacting with there. So the vision for the new engine was to have sort of Rust on the bottom and ink on the top. And I think you know, the general way of visualizing this is that most game engines that you have the sort of runtime or the editor or combo both in the case of Unity. And it's written in a certain language. So usually C or C++, like that's the bottom layer that you generally don't have a lot of access to or a lot of reason to change, right? And then in Unity cases, you have most gameplay systems and things like that get implemented in C#. And then C# and Unity can do kind of some weird stuff where it can kind of reach into the rendering pipeline and tweak stuff about the engine. And, you know, so you have an API there that kind of drives the C++ and then for Ink, you have an Ink C# runtime that Inkle distributes. That's open source, by the way, free and open source. So shout out to Inkle as well. Sorry to them. If I didn't mention that when the Ink slide was up, they're also free and open source. So awesome piece of software there. But yeah, so the Ink runtime runs in C#, and it generally is interpreting, you know, the Ink line by line, and then that drives the C#, and then that drives the engine underneath. So we wanted conceptually something a little bit simpler, a little bit cleaner. And, you know, when you look at it like this, you're like, oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Just have like the Rust bit is the engine, and then the Ink is the top part. So we scoped it out. And we were like, okay, we need a little bit of an editor-like system. We need some elements of Unity's editor system in the sense that we need to be able to inspect things. We need to be able, I think Tristan mentioned this as well. So a lot of parallel experiences here, but need to be able to look at, you know, what does the engine think this particular node component has on it or whatever. And so we ended up building that out for the UX team. Our UX dev, Kiana Mario, who's really awesome. She did a great job of learning the system really fast. Like within a couple weeks, like learned how to manipulate the new file system that we were setting up for this type of asset, and started to iterate on that. It was incredible how fast that came together. And then we wanted to empower the Ink scripting to do more of what we used to do in C#, and to have that clean divide. And I think this is unusual. I think a lot of people do build a Rust game engine now, and they build it and they stick a scripting engine on top. But I think that there's also this like tendency to want to put a lot of gameplay code into the Rust right now. I think Bevy encourages that. And I think we are going to try our best to pull away from that. We're going to try our best to make sure that we can put stuff like even like menus and whatever. So what you see here is on the left, this is one of the like setup screens for your character when you're starting a new game. And on the right, that's the corresponding Ink that actually runs that scene. It sets up some variables that are going to be tracked for the rest of the game. And the actual like buttons that you can click on in the UI are directly triggering dialogue options in the Ink. So it's a weird way to conceptualize a menu, but it works very well for us. We also ended up, so I tried Bevy Inspector eGUI. So our editor layer is eGUI. Everything else is Bevy UI. So we tried briefly to use like the out of the box crates out there. But when you're working fast, sometimes it takes as long to learn something as it does to roll your own, especially if you're like a dev with, a couple decades of experience and you're like, I know how to like think about this and I don't know how this crate wants me to do it. And I don't understand why the crate wants me to do it that way until I make it myself and make the same mistakes or whatever. So hard lessons learned, but yeah. So you can see that there's a bit of live editing possible. What it does is it looks at components and it abuses the reflect trait to dump it into JSON. And then this like inspector here is just glorified JSON editor inspector. And then it marks a field as dirty. And then the engine goes, oh, hey, okay, that's dirty. Let me update the component appropriately. And so there's some live editing, and we can in fact open and save different scenes. And so that we kind of have, it's sort of like an editor. So yeah, I mean, I alluded to this earlier, but this idea of like, why Rust, why Bevy, we're making a visual novel. We don't need performance. We don't need parallelization. We don't need an ECS. That's not super necessary. But some big things that really drew me to Rust were the stability. Like, it's hard to write code that is fundamentally bad in Rust. It does a lot of the, prevents you from making a lot of the dumb mistakes that I have made in C# or in C or in whatever. And the portability. Within an hour or two, we had, Heather was able to get cargo run going on her Mac, and to just boom, up comes the project. That was wild to have that be so much easier even than, and I probably will get some enemies for this, but easier even than installing Unity and running a project that way. So that was really, really cool. Bevy, honestly, we were not looking at Bevy, or I wasn't thinking Bevy was a lock. I had played with Bevy back in 0.12. And when I came back to it, I was kind of like, yeah, it's kind of nice. I did try, I'm not going to lie, I tried multiple times to not use Bevy. I tried to use WGPU at its lowest level. I tried to set up like an SDL type thing. And I went, you know what? Bevy has done this. And I mean, again, kudos to the Bevy team and community. Bevy has done so much of the heavy lifting and has done such an amazing job of making sure that even things like windowing, rendering, all that stuff, device input, all that is incredibly well handled. So why reinvent the wheel? And I like the concept of an ECS. I do, even though I'm not great at it. And more on that in a second. And then why port an existing game and not create a new game from scratch? I think a lot of people might be like, well, you're wasting effort. Why are you remaking a game that exists for the most part? And the answer is that like that well-defined problem space is probably the ideal way to tackle this problem of like, okay, we're going to jump into something very unknown. I'm going to learn some new technology and we're going to learn on the spot. We're going to build something, but at least we know what the shape the product at the end takes. So the problem space resides in like, how does this work for us and how do we structure Bevy so that it works for us? And it's not also at the same time, how do we build a game? How do we make a game fun, or how do we build this content out, and et cetera? I'm going to skip this because I'm running out of time. So, and I've talked mostly about this. I mean, Ink is a very sequential and iterative language that it's got its own inherent challenges in making it like control interactivity. Rust, yeah, I do happen to be an idiot on this particular subject. Lots have been said about Rust, about people much smarter than myself in terms of its suitability for games. And I think I agree with a lot of what's been said in terms of Rust's immutability or resistance to change, in terms of once you've programmed something, it doesn't, making fluid changes requires a level of skill in Rust that I don't think a lot of people have. And it's a lot harder than in a gaming script like C# or Lua or something like that, where you are able to kind of just like do absolutely curse things and be like, yeah, I'm going to just quickly transform.find this menu widget and I'm going to turn it off because I just want to see how that looks. I want to see how that runs. And certainly if you are a programmer like myself who comes to Rust after, nearly 20 years of programming, and you're saying, okay, well, I've read the Rust programming book. I've done Rustlings. I've written a few like small projects, some for like Raspberry Pi Pico. So I did some embedded work in Rust, and I've done some open source work in Rust for whatever emulation for 6502 stuff. I did a bunch of like little mini projects. I was like, okay, I get Rust. I understand it. No, not at all. There's incredible things that even Bevy does with macros, and I think that that's just like so hard to overstate how much that can change the shape of what you think you know about Rust. And the same thing with all the great crates that exist out there. I like, once you know Rust, you don't know Rust. You know sort of syntax, and you don't really know why all these crates exist, like Serday and stuff, that have these very opinionated, idiomatic ways of using them. And you're going to hit a bunch of walls thinking that you know what you're doing. Sorry, too long on that slide. Let's keep going. So same thing, ECS. I think a lot of Unity programmers who come to Bevy are going to hit this. I think a lot of Bevy people who have Unity experience are going to go, I know ECS. I do game objects. I stick components on them. And I write a component script and I attach it to a game object. And every game object I attach it to, that's a system basically, right? And like, yes, but no, not at all. Like the amount that Bevy and Rust makes you think ahead of time about like, okay, what are my dependencies and how much are my scripts allowed to like affect each other and crosstalk. I had a lot of the same issues that Tristan did in terms of like, everything's an event. Wait, no, there's a 1 frame delay. Wait, ordering of systems, all that stuff really comes and gets you. And I think, Bevy has the tagline, I think, of refreshingly simple game engine. It's like chess, easy to learn, hard to master, right? Like it's, I think, very, very challenging to understand why you're doing things the way you're doing. And certainly one of the things that I wrestle with a lot is this sort of code smell of like, why is my function signature like 800 things? So this is the function signature for our main parsing function that kind of basically takes an inc, one of our Blinky commands. And once it parses it, it has to have access to like, a Blinky command can do a bunch of different stuff. So what do? We have access to like 20 different event writers. Okay, sure. Also, the Bevy's really smart about parallelization. And so stuff isn't thread safe. So you can't just send closures around. So you can't, so that led to this issue, which is that I got kind of a foot gunned by trying to use Blade Inc., which awesome crate written by Rafael Garcia. Don't know them, but it's fantastic. It's a feature parity with the official Inc. C# runtime. This was my first experience with like, okay, how do I like non-send resource, and how does that affect actually like parallelization and stuff like that? Even though that's something that's not like relevant to our game. And I do think that's something that Bevy should have is possibly a less aggressively parallelized version, something that allows more explicit ordering of systems, something that allows like all the things that Tristan mentioned, because realistically, I think most people are not going to run into performance issues with Bevy based on just that. Might get some pitchforks for that, but especially in our case, that was the case. But so our final solution here was to be, or not final, but the current solution was to be like, okay, the non-send resource loads up and says like, do I have a story object? If I don't, check to see if I have an inc asset, and if I don't, then reload that. And if I so, and this also was something that we needed because, as I mentioned before, with the file watcher stuff, the writers will save an inc file. They'll write over the inc JSON, and that will immediately trigger the game to reload. Super awesome feature. Yeah, and so that helps for that. But like getting this structure set up was surprisingly more difficult than it seems. Okay, really running out of time here, so I'm going to be real quick. Scene management, can't wait for BSN. So wrote our own with advice from the UX dev I mentioned earlier, Kiana, and so basically tried to make something that was ergonomic for them. I did see some of the examples of Rusty object notation. Just too verbose, I think, and too non-specific, hard to parse. And we tried to make a scene exporter from Unity, but the anchor system is too different. The editor thing, I think we've all hacked this to death. So yeah, I thought this was really clever when I finally came up with this to like take the reflect thing and do the whole JSON thing. We'll move on from that. Obviously, Bevy, Inspector, eGUI, and like things exist, and lots of great efforts exist, but like I said, learning takes a long time versus rolling your own to have something that ready in production in like a few days. And then lastly, just like misunderstandings from my side about how like the node system works. So obviously we work a lot in 2D, and a lot of our game is UI and UX work. Things I thought would work would be like, oh, is reflect on every single Bevy component? No. So I was like, oh, well, why doesn't everybody just use, reflect everything and then serialize everything and then spit it back out? Yeah, that was a rabbit hole I chased for a few days. That was not a good use of my time. I definitely got a little bit confused about like putting Bevy UI up and spawning multiple windows, because originally I was going to have like a multiple window setup for the editor. I never managed to get the debug outlines working. I know that there was like this feature, and I think maybe the way that I was doing like this like check for dirty properties, I think I was blowing up the outlines maybe from that feature. Last thing, actually this one is important. I think there are behavioral differences from how Bevy UI sort of defines itself. It looks a lot like HTML and CSS. It looks a lot like, padding, margin, position absolute, all this stuff. But there's just behavioral differences between it and actual HTML and CSS. And I think that maybe they should be addressed. Maybe they should be cleaned up. I don't know. Maybe it's too late. But simple things like if I put padding on a node and I put text on the same node, in HTML and CSS, I expect the text to be affected by the padding, but that is not the case as far as I've seen in Bevy so far. Again, limited time to experiment, but from what I've seen, the text, if you put it in a child node, yes, it respects it, but otherwise it just kind of blows out. Okay, sorry, went way over time there. So I think so. We're done. That's it. Thank you, everybody. If you got more questions or want to talk more after this show, I think we're gonna have a panel thing right now, or if there's time. But there's my contacts. Please feel free to reach out. Thank you all for being here. That's it. That's all.
Hey, thanks, JP. Super
Thank you.
interesting. That's some nice insights there. I didn't look into this text padding thing. That's curious, but yeah, it might be a design limitation by the node defining the padding, and then the text actually being like a sibling of that and not a child of it, right?
Yeah.
But it's worth looking into, I guess. So yeah, we have a bunch of questions. Let me start.
Oh gosh.
No, it's not that bad. and also I think some you already answered probably down the line. Let's see. So you referred to something in the beginning as a virtual workspace. Maybe you can elaborate what that is.
Yeah, so the terminology there is hard to. I don't know. It's a Rust thing. So basically, it's when you have a Rust folder containing multiple crates, and you just go ahead and hit cargo run, and Rust just goes, okay, every crate that isn't a binary is a library, and they're assumed to be the same, like associated projects. So the way that we have it is Blinky's a crate, and the game itself is Blinky's like a library crate, and the game itself is a binary crate. And so the issue with that was when you run cargo run, I think this is talking about the file watcher issue that I noticed way back.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. When you and this is fixed, obviously it was merged, but when you ran cargo run from that root, the file watcher would get confused and try and look in that root folder, whereas the assets were expected to live in alongside the binary. So they'd be in a subfolder from where you were running cargo run from.
Interesting.
Yeah, so that was one of the first things that I really tackled in Bevy. I was like, what? Why doesn't this work? Maybe I misunderstand it. Yeah.
Well, yeah, interesting. I've never seen a project set up like that, so that's probably why this wasn't working in the beginning.
The plan is
not the most usual setup, I guess.
Yeah, the plan is long term, right? To have Blinky be its own product and to have that split out. So it is completely. You could pull it out and move it into another game, or we might open source it by itself, right?
Yeah, that's very exciting to hear. Actually, that might be an option. I'm gonna keep chasing you up on that. Okay, virtual workspace. Does it save the live edited JSON from to disk? I guess is the question.
Yes.
Your
So
editor.
yeah. So that was another interesting Bevy dead end that I went down, which was asset saving. And I did learn that there is sort of an asset saver thing, or at the time, I don't know, this was like late 0.14 and early 0.15. That like asset saver doesn't really work to like take that writer and then immediately write back over. So I did write a thing that, yeah, it takes the JSON of the scene and it does blow it out. And then that triggers the file watcher, which kind of goes, oh, hey, this changed, and it forces a reload. So it's pretty neat.
Oh,
Yeah.
nice. Yeah. Okay. So it's actually not changing, like you don't do the change in code. You basically rely on the file watcher that triggers a reload and then changes the visualization of the scene.
We do both, and it's redundant.
Okay.
Yeah, it's redundant, but but it's kind of necessary. The other thing that is challenging, so there's kind of like a double-edged sword about that whole like serialize to JSON and come back, which is obviously if you go to JSON, you don't have type information, like strict type information. You know, this was a number, or this was a string, or this was a Boolean. Like that's pretty much it. So there's stuff in Rust, obviously, where, you know, something that it looks like a string in JSON is actually an enum. Mm-hmm. And so when you come back, the JSON will be like, no, not a valid number. So what it does do is when it live reconverts back into the component, if it's incorrect, it will just hold on to the JSON as in the dirty format and just say, no, this isn't valid. Keep trying. And then once it hits a valid state, that's when it instant saves.
But how does that happen? If you programmatically serialize a valid type into JSON and then save it, how can it come back being undeserializable?
Because you can type anything into that field, right? So it's an eGUI field, okay. so you can do whatever you want.
Yeah. Okay. No, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Gotcha. But then, oh well, let's not go there. Maybe in the panel.
Sorry, it's a rabbit hole. Yeah.
I can imagine. Yeah. Okay. Oh, that's an interesting one. Is portability to consoles a concern for you?
Yes. Straight up, yes. I know I've had conversations with various people who have talked about like maybe there is like secret work on Switch portability and maybe not. And I know that there was that really cool Game Boy Advance push from, I think it was a Bushrat, I think was the username. Really cool stuff, but I obviously pushing to something like Switch and Xbox is a concern. I will say, you know, we would like to be on those platforms, and certainly we're hoping to get like some kind of funding, whether that's government or otherwise, to have time to work on that, or to hire somebody from the Bevy community to work on that. We have released games on Switch and Xbox and PlayStation 5. The Disney one is on all those platforms. So yeah, it's a concern. Is it like deal breaker? No. The bulk of our money is iOS and desktop, I think.
Oh, so this is going to go on iOS?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, nice. Okay. Yep. That's an interesting topic. Gonna catch you later on that one. Okay. Next one. How does the rewrite compare in iteration times for you to Unity, I guess?
Oh, interesting. Like compile times, I'm assuming that means, or
so I guess like end to end from a change to see the difference on your app.
Yeah. Some things are a lot faster, right? So the stuff that we've got File Watcher looking for. So like the fact that we're moving a lot of stuff into ink means that we are pretty much ready the second that the ink is ready. So Inkle provides Inky, which is an IDE for the ink scripting language. Could they name it any more confusing? I don't know, but yeah. So when you export from that, you get a precompiled JSON, and basically the second that hits the file, the assets folder of our game, the game recognizes, okay, I've got to reload the whole story. So that's instant, or as close to instant as practical. Rust's changes obviously are significant, and boy, oh boy, did I not know, like when I was first playing with Bevy and Rust, like the dynamic linking feature, I was like, how do people tolerate this? Because I I would make a small change and it would be like a 2-minute recompile. And I'm like, what's going on? So yeah, I feel like that's something that like really Bevy should push as mandatory for anybody who's coming from any other environment to have even like remotely reasonable compile times is that dynamic linking feature. But once the dynamic linking feature was in there, I really feel like it's pretty quick still. Like it's maybe 30 seconds of compile time still for me.
But is that different? Like when you say that it's pretty instant with the ink specific changes, is that different in the Unity version?
Yes, only because the way we built the Unity engine. So this was a sort of, I know I blew through this part of the presentation, but the way we had structured the Unity engine, ink has to be sort of an embedded asset. And so it takes the JSON and it stuffs it in. So then the C# has to recompile to be like, oh, you have a new embedded asset. So the whole, you go through, like, if you ever stop and start a complex project in Unity, you're sitting there for like a minute or two, at least. So it's faster. I would say this is much faster.
Yeah. But it's also not entirely impossible for you to potentially reload that in runtime as well.
Not at all. Yeah, and that was a structural mistake, really, in the Unity side of things. But at a certain point, there's enough of those structural mistakes because there's things which are easy to do in Unity, right? Where you're like, I'm just going to change. I'm going to drag and drop this into a field in Unity, and I'm going to change this thing. And so, from a user like ergonomics standpoint, very fast, very easy. And that overrides sort of the sensibility of like, but what if I need to make rapid changes to this a lot in the future? That problem comes later. And who knows? I mean, this approach might implode at some other point, but it seems a lot better.
Yeah. No, that's true. Okay. Cool. Last question. So, have you tried Bevy with the single threading feature? Does that drop the send requirements? I don't even know about the single threading feature.
That's news to me.
I think there's a multi-threading feature, but no, I'm pretty sure there's a way to, like, I think there's a default feature for multi-threading. So maybe dropping that could be interesting. Although I'm not sure if that changes anything about the send requirements, to be fair.
I don't know. Yeah, it doesn't. That's super cool.
Didn't come up, right?
Yeah, I will say, like, a lot of stuff that I heard from Tristan's talk in terms of like events and observers and triggers was long-term more problematic and mirrored my experience, in terms of like I had the 1 frame delay and stuff like that, and system ordering was way more complex than this one thing around the ink, the blade ink crate, and it being non-send and everything. I guess one caveat to that is something that we used a lot in C# were closures and Lambda functions and things like that, to be like, hey, I don't want this big chunk of code here. I'm going to inject this like, callback or whatever, and it's going to get passed along to these different systems. And so they can sort of self-encapsulate, and it kind of looks like it's cleaner than it is.
Yeah.
So yeah. And you can't do that easily in Bevy, because as soon as you make a function, I think most functions aren't send safe. I don't know. I had trouble. Again, I'm a professional idiot in Rust, so that could just be my problem.
Yeah. Okay. Let's talking about Tristan's learning so much. Let's get him up on stage and see if there's some questions between these two presentations. Let me get him up here. Tristan. Hey. So we don't technically have any more audience questions, although if anyone in stream still has something for that you want to ask both of them, please feel free to drop them. Otherwise, my personal favorite right now is obviously what was the migration to Bevy 16 like, if you've already done it, and what kind of most interesting features do you see, or are you looking forward to adopt as soon as you have? Tristan, do you want to start?
Yes, I can go. I have migrated already to 16, and it was by far, I think, the easiest for me. Not so much that was backward incompatible. I think the hardest was the last 15 to me. But no, it was really pleasant, and the feature I'm looking forward to use is relations, obviously, because I have my own system right now, which relies on a resource. Like my source of truth is a resource, and I give it an entity and the name of a relation, and it gives me back all the entities that are related, and it has some stuff like you can configure it to auto despawn related children and stuff like that. So it's the same as what 16 introduced, but done less. It's not its best. What Bevy did is best. So I will migrate at one point.
Yeah, it's best. TM. Nice. Okay. I'm curious to hear your experience with that, like migrating that. Is that like a single relations pattern, or do you have different types of relations like that?
It's mostly one-to-one and one-to-many. So exactly the use case of the 16 version.
Yeah, although one-to-one, I mean, you're just going to use the one-to-many and restrict it so that they can only have the or did it have one-to-one? I probably missed that.
It is one-to-one. It got sneaked in. It got sneaked in.
Okay.
If I remember well.
Nice. Okay, I didn't even realize. Cool. I got to make
it's
a post
a subset
about
of the one-to-many, so it's easy.
Yeah. JP, how old are you?
We have not migrated. I think probably we won't before release because, yeah. Entity relationships, like hierarchy relationships, are definitely a pain point for us. A big part of like how we do the scene stuff is we sort of assume a 1080p framework, or we let the scene file define what sort of screen size it expects and then scales everything. And we can have multiple scenes loaded additively. So certain scenes can be like, well, I wanted a 1080p screen and I wanted a 720p screen. So you need to traverse the hierarchy to see which canvas you are actually part of. And so doing that is annoying with like ancestor iterators and stuff like that. It would be nice to have slightly cleaner relationship systems like that. But yeah, I don't see any like pressing reason to go to 0.16. And to be honest, like a few weeks before a launch is a bad time to migrate.
No, of course.
Yeah.
And to be fair, I'm not sure the traversal of parent-child hierarchies is actually substantially changed. I think the biggest change is that you can have custom relationships that work in that similar fashion. I don't think that's iterating like parent descendants or whatever is much change there. But yeah, I certainly enjoy mostly to have, if you work a lot with children hierarchies, it might still be interesting to look into the updated spawn mechanics that makes spawning a lot like convoluted hierarchies, definitely way less verbose in code. So that could be interesting. But I obviously totally get it. Like shortly before release, that might be too much of a burden without getting like actual substantial reward for it, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So the other big one that I usually am interested to hear in is like, what's the biggest thing that if you had a magic wand that you would change? I mean, there's some hints in the slides that we've seen so far, but I would like to have you basically pick out the one big one. What would you say, JP, is the one for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think, like I said, I think, and this will be controversial, but I think I would change Bevy to be parallelism as a feature. I know that's heresy. I know, but I think getting people, if Bevy wants to say, hey, we're refreshingly simple, come to us, come check it out. I think you need to start people off sort of in the arena of performance is an afterthought, and getting people on something that works and works the way that they mentally model it and expect it to is a priority over let's have this crazy hyper efficient system that can parallelize, from the start. That's my thought.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense, right? If you're not really benefiting from those aspects, then why do you want to pay for it?
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe there's actually some merit to this multi-threading feature. Like maybe it's like a boom. Suddenly it becomes send free.
Yeah, I don't know. It is great. Obviously, it works very well, and I think it's a major a technical achievement. I'm really impressed by it. I just don't know if that is the thing that people should see when they first start a Bevy project.
Yeah, gotcha. Tristan, what about you? Imagine you had a magic wand.
I'm thinking about this topic about multi-threading. It was really, for me, it was something important when I learned about the engine. So maybe if it's turned off, it's still to me a kind of a selling point. Like for the kind of game I'm making, the time of a frame is really short, so you want to use the maximum power available. So, but. So for the magic wand, the thing I will change is the UI, like I said in my slides. It is usable. UI or Bevy UI are both usable, but it's at the moment it requires too much. It introduces too much technical problems that stays on your mind. It's too much. Too much is put in your way. I don't want to fight the borrow checker because I'm busy. I'm busy designing a UI, like how it looks. Is it intuitive? It's like higher level problems than technical ones. So my first need when I write my UI, my system is like I just want something that works. It's okay if it's not efficient or performance, but I want it to work, to test it with the players, and if it's okay, then I'll think more technically about it. And it's
but is that different if you like from what you see in Bevy UI? Do you think it would be different if you now would have done it, redo it in Bevy UI in the magic world where you had the time for that?
Oh yeah, I kind of see yes the interest because I don't remember the versions, but they introduced a lot of what I needed, like a flexbox and shadows, more control on overflow and the way it overflows, like scrolling. All of that stuff, and I saw see in a meetup Bevy HUUI by Lomi. It's his nickname, and it's like I wanted that, and on one moment I thought I could rewrite all of my UI using this. It's that I need.
Yeah, that's tempting, huh?
Yeah.
Okay, but that sort of means that you would use the magic wand to migrate your shit to Bevy UI. So let's take one step back in like the magic wand for a change in Bevy that you would like to do if you had one.
Oh, difficult one. I'm not sure I have an idea. Like it would be the editor. It will be to have an editor, if I can wave my wand and tomorrow there is something new with Bevy, it will be an editor. But it will be an editor that is kind of a Lego one. Like you build your own editor with it. It's like a kind of helpers, a set of tools that are lower level helpers, and maybe provide one default editor for when you get started, but also have a possibility to take what you need on the shelf. Yeah.
To like modify and extend. That's I mean that was one of the big features for me when I looked at Unity for the first time, right? Like, wait, I can just drop this C# code and I'm immediately seeing that thing in my editor and I can use that. That's pretty strong, right? That's probably what you're referring to. Yeah, I can totally see that. Okay, cool.
It's not very original, I guess.
Yeah, well, actually, was it the first? Yeah, probably. It's a good question, actually, where they got that from. So, do you have any questions that you think could be interesting about the other project that you thought when you saw the presentation from each other?
Yeah, I have one for GP. Because I'm a solo dev, I don't know what it's like to work in a team using Bevy, and how it has an impact on your workflow. Like when you're multiple developers working on it at the same time, how is the work split?
Yeah, so I was very lucky in that team members wanted to like help co-develop this engine, and not in the sense that they wrote any Rust code, but they wanted to shape what their experience looked like. So yeah, I think like a lot of things that are happening in terms of Bevy, I think a lot of people are like yourself. They're working solo, or it's very small teams. And I think that the approach that's taken usually is gameplay in the Rust code, UI in the Rust code, all this stuff that you're talking about is very familiar to me. It's how I did a lot of projects. And I think that doesn't scale because a lot of people don't know Rust. A lot of people don't know Bevy. That's a very specific talent set. And a lot of people who are very talented at UX or writing or whatever, they're not going to have time to learn that. So what, to answer your question a little bit more concretely, I think the point is that I spent a lot of my time in Rust being like, okay, how do I make a system that's going to take what they like data from them and build the game that way? I'm not building the game. I am building the game, but I'm not doing what I used to do, which is to actually like code in mechanics or anything like that. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to set up a system. And so what we had for example, with Kiana, she would be recreating some of these screens, and she would say like, hey, I really need to be able to like do what we just mentioned, actually flex layout, which was a super awesome thing that got added to Bevy. Because I need to be able to have like an arbitrary number of buttons coming in and coming down, or like we have a phone, like a cell phone interface that comes up with an arbitrary number of messages. So for me, it's like, okay, how do I expose that in a JSON file to Kiana so that she can easily like be like, hey, here's the template, and then your code needs to take the template and do stuff with it when the actual like ink data comes in. So there's a lot of like you're connecting pipes, and that's your job, and to try and make it so that these various team members can work without you. That's the goal. That's the goal, is that you want them to be able to do as much as possible without you in the pipeline, if that's a practical thing. And it worked very well. I will say, and I have to admit this, unfortunately, we did downsize a lot. So we're down to 3 people. So it is way less of a priority than it was when in January, February. So we had 7 people, I think, around that time was our core staff. So for now, it's going to be less focused on that, but definitely we saw promise in that sort of way of developing, and we saw lots of times where it was like UX person would develop a UI, writer would say, okay, I'm calling your UI at this point in the story. It would load up, and they could, between the two of them, just work that out, and they could save and reload the game really fast, and it would be nice iteration without me involved.
Nice. So the answer is basically collaborating on a Bevy Rust project. Essentially, don't outsource the stuff that other people are supposed to touch.
Yes, I mean, in a way, when you're working on Bevy and you're working on any project, you're working with thousands of other developers, right? Because you are working with a bunch of other talented developers in Rust who are moving the API underneath you, and they're making crates, and they're making all these other cool stuff. I mean, both of you are doing exactly that. So yeah, I think my point is basically like teams.
Of course, I was just obviously.
Oh yeah. I think my point is more to like availability of Rust talent, right?
Yeah,
which is not common. Yeah,
that's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would have assumed that everyone is on his or her own crate. Like, okay, you take this crate and I take this one, and we meet up every week for what is public and the interface between those crates.
Yeah, I like that.
That would be a perfect world, right? Yeah. But one other thing that crossed my mind when you talked about these specific screen ratios that you've built this for, like what's the vision that you have to get this on mobile then? Because then you are like that's gonna fall like really on its face, right? To have everything for 1080p.
Yeah, well, it's an approach we've done before. And in Unity, obviously we would target 1080p, but then we would anchor stuff to various corners of the screen. So if it does get ultra wide or super narrow or whatever, like Curse Cafe, I think it supports technically like square screens all the way to ultra wide. Doesn't support portrait mode, but yeah. I think.
Okay, so you're basically aiming for landscape, and then it's gonna more or less scale into the right box.
Yeah, and like I said, we're a small company, and I just don't think that it's practical to expect a small company to do like super responsive design for video games in this current climate.
Yeah.
Especially with the depth of content, like there's like tons of our time and effort goes into writing, and a not insignificant part goes into art, and so the rest of that being like, okay, UX and programming is a very small fraction of the amount of time that we have. So we do try to make it work. We try our best. We try it on a bunch of different screen ratios, and if it looks really bad, we try and like letterbox it or whatever. But
yeah. Makes sense. And is web a consideration for any one of you?
No.
Sorry. Tristan?
Sorry?
Is web or /WebAssembly any consideration for you as a target?
No, not at all. I'm targeting PC only. For now. Maybe I'll try a Steam Deck build, but before that, I need the game to be successful on PC and before porting. Considering even the need to port it.
Yeah,
because it's a wild ecosystem. Yes, as you said.
Yeah, so you're gonna aim for all platforms that Steam supports, or just like Windows, or what's the plan?
For now, it's just Windows, but today I was tracking a memory leak, and I just got a Linux build working really easily, so might get a Linux build in the end.
Nice. I mean, then Steam Deck is pretty low-hanging fruit, right? It's more like the gamepad support that you would have to, oh my God, somehow squeeze into eGUI. I don't know. Does it, like, is there, that's probably very manual, right?
It will be an adventure. I don't know. I don't know yet.
Yeah.
I did have a question, Tristan, if that's okay. Just about you have eGUI for, it looks like, both the main game's UI and your sort of editor UI. How do you like logically split those? Is there like a way to like have like we only use eGUI in a very hacky way for our like editor, so I'm kind of wondering how you like silo those two worlds, if you do at all.
Oh, okay. To split, I use different windows. Like all my debugging UI goes in separate windows. I have two of them, one for logging and one for the rest, and inspector and cheat codes and that kind of stuff. And it's a feature flag. Like when I build in release mode, all the debug code is skipped. When I build, typically I do a cargo run and features. I have features called dev, and dev enables the editor and all some logging, monitoring, and all that kind of stuff. So I'm using the same UI for everything, but in production, like the final product, it's skipped with a feature flag.
Okay.
And all the theming, the look, the way it looks different is done with. I have a resource. I have a set of resources called that I call themes, and that do a boilerplate like manually calling the painter and drawing images. and things like 9slice I have my own solution for that, and I have put all of it in a resource and manually use it when I need it. I use the painter a lot. I have read more code about EGUI than I have for Bevy. I went more deep in EGUI.
That's crazy.
Solve my problems.
Maybe because you had to.
Yeah, because I had to.
Yeah.
It's I would gladly have stayed outside of it.
Yeah. Interesting. Tristan, is the speaking of EGUI, is the immediate mode nature of it? Is that a performance concern at all for you? Like, have you noticed any of that?
I have no comparison, so I can say if it's better or not, but it's not a concern right now. It's really fast. And as I said in the presentation, I use when I have a long computation, I use the dedicated component or resources that act as a cache. And as a former web developer, it's something I'm really used to. The caching mechanics. It's something you like what is a good key for a cache so it gets refreshed enough, and it's like the problems I have solved for the past 15 years, so it felt very natural to go that way. Yeah.
Nice.
And I think that immediate mode skips some problems like how to sync stuff. Like, if you're not in immediate mode, how do you keep in sync your UI and the real state of the game?
Well, yeah, I mean, I mean, my theory, to be honest, because I've not built a heavy EGUI game logic yet. My theory is that it's easier than you think, because you have a different sort of trouble when dealing with this whole lifetime ownership trouble of passing down this context into the EGUI hierarchy, right? Versus in my experience, either the UI flat out reads in their like you have an update system and it flat out reads the queries that you need to get the state out and then pick the right elements of the UI that you need to update, right? Or you even have this sort of double buffered, I don't know, like specific components contain the information that you like precisely cater for the UI, so that you don't have to do like heavy computations more than you need, which boils down to this caching that you now have in your EGUI solution, I guess, right? But sometimes it can be more efficient if you have like a more precise component for what the UI needs, instead of having to read like these massive game relevant components that everything else is using.
I see. But I'm also seeing in the chat Michael saying how to keep them in sync, use a trigger. Yes, I know it's my trademark.
Of course. How is that not the first?
I'm gonna file a complaint for infringement. And but the thing is that I use the cache very infrequently. It's really like cache is the exception. It's like I have 2, max 3 of them. But immediate mode will catch every update, and I don't have to think about it because I'm scanning the real world every frame. So for displaying it immediately, so there is no worry about did I forgot a trigger? Like, is there a trigger that is missing at this precise place? And each time I update something, I have thinking about which trigger I could send to update the UI is out of my mind.
Yeah. I mean,
so it's a trade between performance and ease of use.
Yeah. Although, to be fair, there is also just like change detection built into ECS that you could use for that same thing, right? Like, hey, this part is visualized in the UI, so I need to be notified when it changes, and then I immediately change the UI. But of course, that can lead to a lot of updates depending on how you that sort of implies that your game logic changing those components has to somewhat have a idea of how the UI is going to be triggered from that, so that it doesn't escalate.
Yeah. It's a road I could have gone if I had a better understanding of Bevy when I start the project. And most problems I have is because I started Bevy and the project at the same time. So I made rookie mistakes and I keep assuming them because I can't know it's too late. This project will stay globally with the same architecture and all the upgrades will be for the next one, hopefully.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, cool. Is there anything that we should bring up as a last comment or question? Do you have anything else left? Otherwise, I think we can conclude that here.
Just
I
had one question left, if you're okay.
Yeah, of course.
It's when you GP were talking about porting the game to mobile and console, and I was wondering, I've seen it as a common practice that you can hire contractors to do the porting to other platforms. Like if you have a successful game, you have the budget to do that. And is Bevy an obstacle to that, or are there some known companies that do that and will say, okay, we take your Bevy project and it will be on Xbox? Like,
I wish.
I don't know of any company that exists like that. So yeah, maybe there is. We haven't really gone looking, but I can tell you that they are going to be way less common than Unity porting teams.
Yep.
Yeah.
Even less common than Godot porting teams.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think that's we had the console topic before, right? It's a touchy thing. I think it really requires a successful title to really trailblaze for basically the rest of us. Not only a Bevy specific game, but a Rust specific game. To my knowledge, there's no Rust game on any console so far. And from the experience of other people that I talk to in the industry, it's less of a technical issue because you can just implement a renderer in Bevy yourself, no matter what the graphics API looks like that those proprietary vendors use. It's more going to be a compliance issue, like getting the sign off from the big Nintendo, PlayStation, and co. To really agree with whatever you require in terms of being able to compile to their targets, because I can assume that there is some really proprietary toolchain elements involved that might not ever have ever had to chew on the Rust build, and so there might be a lot of firsts that you have to encounter and solve.
I think that just to quickly touch on that, I think that there will be. I mean, we have access to those SDKs. I think most developers who have done console releases will have access to those SDKs, and they will have access to sort of the C and C++ SDK. And so there's maybe a world where you build out from Rust, you build a binary from Rust, and then you link it with a C library that there's some magic that you could do there, maybe to sort of slide it past Nintendo and be like, we made it in C. I don't know. I don't know how sneaky you have to be or how talented you'd have to be to pull that off. But I think there's a world where that exists.
Yeah.
We got a cool startup concept then.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So that would be nice if you could try that out for us.
Jeez. We definitely need funding in that case. I don't know. It's something that I definitely would love to sink my teeth into, but it's hard for us as a tiny visual novel studio to dig our teeth into. But yeah.
Well, it's time that this Bevy relaunch or rewrite will, going to be like a big rain of money to make all of that happen. Definitely looking forward to that. Okay, guys, thank you so much for being here, and I'm excited to see the projects mature and be released, and happy to get early access and whatnot. I'm definitely interested to play, and just want to remind everyone, you put it out there, right? We can reach out if anyone wants to get access and likes to try the Bevy version. So hopefully people will do that and reach out to your various socials. And yeah, otherwise, really appreciate that you be here. I know this is takes a lot of time, extra time to prepare these talks, so that's highly appreciated. I hope everyone in chat is gonna give you a big hand for that as well. I really enjoyed it, so thank you guys.
Thank you for the invite.
Thank you so much.
Okay, that was the 10th Bevy meetup. Super excited about the lineup again. We already have speakers for the next one, but I want to still use the opportunity to ask everyone in chat, if you know a topic, if you know a potential speaker that you would like to see here and present, because they're working on something super cool. So please reach out to me, or please encourage them to reach out to me as well. And yeah, please join the YouTube, stay up to date, join the meetup group so that you don't miss an upcoming meetup as well. Thank you so much for being here, and have a good rest of the day.